Lesson 7, Soul Travel and Dreams. The claim of the teaching about the awakened soul in the Shariat Ki Sukmad, our way of the master, begs the question, can a person do their spiritual obligations while not alive? Do we have to pass through the sleep state? Islam and a lot of faiths teach that we start on the original vision and fall without the orthodoxy and orthopraxy to maintain us. And what Eckankar teaches is the two later stages of awakened and self-knowing. And I don't know, we could see that this is, in a way, represents awakened, and this other approximately tetrahedral stone can be the self-knowing. The Shariat is supposed to teach how those asleep are unwilling to be in lower realms, but there must be some variety of spiritual slumber that accepts that it exists where it is. Does anyone who doesn't encounter the physical body of the leader of Eckankar ever really meet them? If people who accept Eckankar as truth and have the projections of Eckmasters in their dreams, how can they be considered awakened after they receive their first initiation in Ek? Any odd corporate kinesis? Is the whispers considered to be of the Mahanta really of a satanic spectral entity instead? Does a new gratitude for life always come with membership in a group? Minds, emotions, and bodies were certainly an essential part of their secular or spiritual life before joining a cult. Many do not report that being an Eckankar actually made their dreams better. Many report that it makes them more difficult, but are grateful in their thoughts of difficult spiritual experiences paying off their debts. Eckankar claims it has the most direct path into the heart of God. As Meister Eckhart taught, seeking God is not when we do it for selfish reasons. The fifth Eckankar in this context, initiate, had his books knocked down by his daughter. Kind of reminiscent of the Rumi and Shem's Tabrizi thing, in a way, you could say. He read a quote on this from Meister Eckhart. Not remembering dreams probably has nothing to do with intention and love and power. Do not have to be spiritual poles. Learning soul travel is supposed to be the right motivation, but what is the wrong one? The meeting between their Mahanta or exalted personality mentioned seems to only take part in imagination. Such is the same for the projection of constant role in both inner and outer experiences. In most people, they don't consider God to be that personally involved with either side of their life. If the inner experiences are to be regarded as so real, why do they need confirmed physically? Are there really always such connections? A Nigerian heard his neighbors return from church service for Pentecost. The Sanhedrin thought the early Christian apostles blasphemous for their claim to hear and see from Ek or the Holy Spirit. It is strange that the Christian churches generally disregard such claims of personal guidance. Thinking of his neighbors and his discourse, and the Easy Way Discourses by Klemp, he went to sleep chanting Hu, H-U, or the love song to God, and Wazi, our secret doctrine, Heraclent's spiritual name. He had his own sort of rushing wind and tongues of fire sort of experience, moving like a jet plane, and sparkling white and yellow stars in a vortex. The faster he went, the more he knew that he'd never reach it. Could that projection of a dark blue zone of the mental plane really be telling him that they can't imagine his way into authentic spiritual experience? He thought of it as the river of God. If the Comforter was Jesus, He didn't have to leave for him to come. If the Comforter was Ek, or the Holy Spirit, then it would have been something that would have guided a Messiah like Jesus. It must be that guidance coming to the Ishmaelites by the rock in the corner, prophesied by Jesus. The Nigerian had a couple more experiences that night, but this one that made him feel superior to the Christians, that seemed not to get that message of their festival, was the dearest to him. What is the definition of soul travel? That Dream 2 Discourses by Harold Klemp says on page 163, soul travel is the expansion of consciousness. There is the type where one has an out-of-body experience, but that is not all. Now, Aleister Crowley defined magic as the willful changes in consciousness, so that's sort of soul travel, I guess. One can experience this on the physical, astral, causal, mental, or etheric planes. The physical is said to be the most important place to develop spiritually. Soul travel loses its experiential context when it is called doing things in the name of the Eckankar Trinity, the Sugmad, the Ek, our Holy Spirit in this context, and the Mahanta, our eminence. How is that not worshiping the Eckankar leader and his guardian spirit? How can you serve beyond your capability? Thinking there are special messages in everyday life, like golden-tongued wisdom and dreaming of your importance, is what is called soul travel in dreams. Does denial of barriers really make your life more important? Does divining vague messages as guidance really make a person any more guided than anyone else who's making things up? Engage completely in a dream to make your inner and outer dreams soul travel is what is meant here. One of the people said to have made important discoveries in the fight against sickle cell anemia is said to be an Ekist or Eckankar initiate. He opened a laboratory to study African plants the year I was born. Do Eckmasters play a direct role in 10 central innovations in history? What are they? Since this is his alleged realization, he wrote a letter to the one he considered to be a living Ennead corporate kinesis master about finding a way to cure incurable diseases. Things went ahead with nothing that he could remotely be that he could remotely attribute to his so-called spiritual master. But of course, Dorwin Gross or Dapren and Harold Klemp or Wasi, then just Harold Klemp, received credit for any comfort he had in life. An our Eckankar friend had something for sickle cell anemia that he had been working with for years. Not even a millionaire whose child had it would help. One night, when his money was about out, he dreamt that his Mahanta, or exalted personality, showed up in his dream of racing cars that reached their goal without fuel. The promise of a lesson was lost in the confusion of sleep. He had no money to put his daughter in the school that she passed the test to qualify for. He prayed to his alleged Mahanta, the living Eckmaster, wondering why he didn't provide relief for the sick Negroids and help for his daughter's future. A 6-month test run was soon financed by the benefactor that he hadn't heard from in a year. He lives on enough for his family and his daughter's tuition. He continues his mission of trying to find cures from local plants. Has he gained or lost in spiritual understanding? Can't consciousness still have separate categories like contemplation, dreams, and soul travel? Or is it all the same thing? Now, one of the things that we're finding is that plants and animals do have medicine by themselves, and certainly a lot of them are used in pharmaceuticals. It's not just engineered stuff or chemicals put together in labs. So Modes of consciousness is the section of lesson 7 of Eckankar 2 Discourses by Harold Klemp that starts by making clear that the latter two are different. Does love really unite all forms of consciousness, or are there types that have nothing to do with love? And I can't help but think of the Van Halen song when phrases like that are said, but not gonna get into that. Achila, or Eckankar initiate, had already started with Eckankar 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp when she awoke to a cry from a lost goat. Instead of trying to bring the goat back to its flock, she sang Hue, like H-U-E, to the tone of the cries, till she could sleep again. She dreamt up past lives as a cycle, starting with what was deemed to be the very first one in the lower worlds. She assumed that the story in the dream was the source of her anger in this life. During the study of the Easy Way Discourses by Harold Klemp, she perceived herself as being taken to the Bapiti monastery in the Gobi Desert that no one seems to know about outside of information that started with modern groups like Eckankar. You know, some of the Eckankar stuff from the Theosophy movement, you know, the side that wasn't Aleister Crowley, although Aleister Crowley did, you know, tip his hat to H.P. Blavatsky in some cases. The guy there was considered to be Banjani, son of a genie, fallen angel, you know, presenting a glowing scroll. Soul cleansing was the official interpretation of the experience on pages 168 and 169 of the Eckankar 2 Discourses. An Arahata or Eckankar teacher of their satsang or member classes thought that doing a different spiritual exercise of Ek every night was too much for people only in their 16th month of membership in Eckankar. She had an inner experience that she thought was ruby quartz, and woozy. And as a side note, Peterask is dampen, you know. She complained about lesson 4 of Ek 1 Dream Discourses until she was embarrassed. She complained about something else instead. Now, I'm not saying that any of those names are those things. That's just what people would be thinking that reminds them of. Yeah, complained about something else instead. Could this part's function really be about debasing the Eckists or Eckankar believer into not thinking they have valid complaints? She thought it was where the classes inside her head took place, but never saw the Shariat or any of the 12 Eckankar scriptures in a dream or vision. There are only 2 of these that have been published, and those have been changed since Paul Twitchell wrote them. Phoebe Quantz took her to a mountaintop, but still no book as a light from above. She was taken to a room where she sat in a chair. She vibrated with the sounds and sights that came upon her. Doesn't this account illustrate how not everyone who wants to see the Shariat as a book will see it that way through the help of some alleged Eckmaster? Should we downplay books by treating them as only reservoirs of knowledge? How can someone who believes in the physical and psychic Eckankar teachings talk as Harold Klemp does on page 169? Hugh.